On a seemingly ordinary Sunday evening in September 2010, drug dealer Sean Winters was relaxing in his Portmarnock apartment with friends when at about 10 p.m. his mobile phone rang. After a brief conversation, Winters casually told his friends he'd be stepping out for a few minutes to meet someone. But what followed was anything but casual. According to neighbours, a heated argument soon erupted outside. In the blink of an eye, Winters' body collapsed on the pavement. He'd been shot twice in the back of the head. The gunman, dressed in a dark jacket with the hood pulled up, swiftly jumped into the front seat of a silver Volkswagen Passat, speeding off into the night. Half an hour later, the car was found torched in Coolock. Winters was pronounced dead at the scene. Within hours of this cold-blooded execution, 6 suspects were arrested in a house in Donemead, and 4 others were detained after Gardaí intercepted a suspicious car. All were questioned, but later released without charge. Among the suspects was none other than real IRA leader Alan Ryan. In the heart of Dublin, where the shadows of mystery loom large and the echoes of conflict still resonate, 2 brothers emerged as figures of both fear and fascination. Alan Vincent Ryan, born into a staunchly Republican family, left an indelible mark on Ireland's criminal landscape. Their lives embodying the often blurred line between idealism and violence. Born in North Dublin during the twilight years of the Troubles, Alan and Vincent Ryan were raised in an environment steeped in Republican ideology. From an early age, they were immersed in stories of resistance against British rule and the ongoing struggle for a united Ireland. But as they came of age, the world around them was changing. The Provisional IRA had laid down arms, and the Good Friday Agreement promised a new era of peace. For many, it was a time of hope and reconciliation. For others, like the Ryans, it was a call to arms. Alan Ryan, the elder of the two, was quick to answer that call. By his late teens, he'd already joined the Fianna Éireann, the youth wing of the Republican movement. It was here that Alan began to shape his identity as a hardline Republican, one who saw the peace process not as progress, but as a betrayal of the cause. A former IRA member, speaking anonymously, reflected on those turbulent times, suggesting that the peace process had created a vacuum which dissidents and diehards quickly tried to fill. It was an opportunity that Alan Ryan seized with both hands. He first came to the attention of the Irish police in 1999, when authorities uncovered a real IRA weapons training camp in an underground bunker in County Meath. Alan was one of 10 people arrested in the raid. 6 months later, he pleaded guilty to receiving training in the use of firearms at the camp and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Alan was just 19 years old at the time. After his release from prison, Alan became heavily involved in extorting and threatening drug dealers. By the mid-2000s, he climbed the ranks of the dissident Republican movement, establishing himself as a key figure in what became known as the real IRA. He forged strong connections with dissident activists in the Northwest and maintained close ties between his Dublin-based gang and the leadership of the Derry faction. This relationship strengthened, particularly after a major conflict with the real IRA's commander in Dublin, during which Ryan reportedly used his muscle to support the Derry group's operations. Alan's vision of Republican struggle was far removed from the political maneuverings of Sinn Féin or the armed campaigns of the past. Instead, he saw a new battlefield in the streets of Dublin, one where control of the criminal underworld was the prize. His modus operandi was as simple as it was brutal. He and his group would extort money from drug gangs and businessmen across the city and demand protection money from firms. His faction would soon get involved in feuds with major gangland criminals, and his group is thought to have been responsible for at least 3 murders in Dublin and many more violent acts. They targeted drug dealers operating in North Dublin, demanding protection money and using violence to enforce their will. To Alan, this was not mere criminality, but a continuation of the Republican struggle by other means. He saw himself as a Robin Hood figure, extorting from the criminal elements to fund the cause. But the reality was far from heroic. Alan's reign of terror left a trail of broken bodies and shattered lives. One particularly gruesome incident saw a well-known drug dealer have his fingers chopped off in a park in Drumcondra, a brutal message to those who would defy the real IRA's demands. As Alan's power grew, so did his public profile. Unlike the secretive IRA members of the past, Alan and his crew embraced a flashy, ostentatious lifestyle. The Players' Lounge, a local pub in Fairview owned by the father of soccer star Anthony Stokes, became their de facto headquarters. A place where young women flocked and the beer flowed freely, even if Alan himself was known to abstain. In July 2010, the pub turned into a scene of horror when notorious gun-for-hire John Wilson opened fire and shot 3 men. Wilson was sent by veteran criminal Sean Hunt, an ex-IRA chief who had amassed millions through various illegal activities, including smuggling cigarettes. Hunt clashed with Alan when he'd begun extorting protection money from him. However, John Wilson messed up, and instead of killing the target, he nearly killed 3 innocent men. Meanwhile, the flashy lifestyle Alan and his crew displayed was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it attracted a new generation of young men to the cause, drawn to the promise of power, money, and a sense of belonging. On the other, it made Alan and his associates easy targets for both law enforcement and rival gangs. In the meantime, Vincent Ryan, known as Vinnie, was following in his brother's footsteps. Younger and perhaps more impressionable, Vinnie idolized Alan and soon found himself deeply embedded in the Rio IRA's activities. Where Alan was the strategist and leader, Vinnie was the soldier, the enforcer. The brothers' rise to power did not go unchallenged. Their extortion racket brought them into direct conflict with established criminal gangs, most notably the increasingly powerful Kinahan cartel. The streets of Dublin became a battleground, with tit-for-tat killings and assassination attempts becoming all too common. The brothers are believed to have targeted convicted drug dealer Eamon Kelly and Brian O'Reilly, both close rivals of the notorious fingerless gang leader Eamon Adon Dunn, who was shot dead in April 2010 after his own people turned against him. Both men, who were told to pay up or be attacked, survived. However, one of the most high-profile incidents occurred in September 2011, the year after the first murder Ryan's group is thought to have been responsible for, that of Sean Winters. In September 2011, Michael the Panda Kelly was gunned down in broad daylight on Marsfield Avenue in Clongriffin. Kelly, also known as Mika, a well-known drug dealer, had reportedly refused to pay protection money to the Ryan brothers. His murder was a statement of intent from the Rio IRA: pay up or face the consequences. The killing of Kelly would prove to be a turning point. It brought increased police scrutiny and, more dangerously, marked the Ryan brothers as targets for some of Dublin's most dangerous criminals. The response came swiftly and brutally. On a Monday afternoon in September 2012, Alan Ryan was on his way to visit some family at a house in the area close to his own. As he was walking along Grange Lodge Avenue with 2 friends, a gunman pulled up behind them. After shooting Alan in the back and legs with a 9mm handgun, the gunman stepped up to Alan's body on the ground and shot him in the head. Alan Ryan died instantly, his life ending on the very streets he had sought to control. The gunman then shot one of the others in the leg before escaping in a silver Volvo car, which was later found burnt out in a nearby graveyard. Within hours of his murder, the Derry branch of the 32 County Sovereignty Movement, which is seen as the political wing of the Rio IRA, paid tribute to Ryan on a website. Alan's funeral was a spectacle that shocked the nation. Hundreds of mourners, many dressed in paramilitary uniform, escorted his coffin through the streets of Dublin. The men's attire included green military-style jumpers and combat trousers, along with scarves covering their faces, dark sunglasses, and black berets. A volley of shots was fired over the coffin, a traditional Republican salute that seemed jarringly out of place in 21st century Ireland. The show of strength was both a final tribute to Alan and a warning to his enemies. The Rio IRA was not finished. At the time of his death, Alan was facing a charge of demanding money with menaces from a Dublin publican. Gardaí were worried about the fact that Republican groups don't tend to forget when members of their organisation have been shot and killed, particularly by drug gangs or violent gangland criminals. In February 2013, 2 individuals suspected of involvement in Alan's murder were arrested when police stopped their car in Enniskillen. The suspects were Pascal Kelly and Jonathan Gill, also known as Mr. Big. During a search of an apartment at Porter Wharf, of which they held the keys, authorities discovered €65,826 and £2,669 in cash, along with 24 mobile phones. Interestingly, the same apartment complex housed 3 PSNI officers, triggering a significant security concern. Among the items seized was a passport with Kelly's photograph, but under the name Brendan Duffy, the alias he had given during his arrest. When questioned, both suspects responded with no comment. Although their bail was initially denied, they were never formally charged with the murder of Alan. For Vinnie Ryan, his brother's death was both a personal tragedy and a call to arms. He stepped up to fill the void left by Alan, determined to continue the fight. But the landscape had shifted. The Rio IRA, already a fractured organisation, was further weakened by internal power struggles and the increasing pressure from both law enforcement and rival gangs. Vinnie found himself caught in a deadly game of cat and mouse. He was arrested and charged in connection with firearms offences related to the murder of Michael Kelly, though he was eventually acquitted due to issues with DNA evidence. But the acquittal did little to ease the pressure on him. The next few years were a blur of violence and retribution. The Rio IRA, under Vinnie's leadership, continued to clash with drug gangs and carry out acts of violence, only that they were fighting a losing battle. The old alliances were crumbling, and the protection once offered by their Republican credentials was wearing thin. In February 2016, the simmering tensions in Dublin's underworld exploded into all-out war, the notorious Kinahan-Hutch feud. The Regency Hotel attack, a brazen assault carried out by a Hutch-aligned gunman disguised as Garda officers, left Kinahan associate David Byrne dead and sent shockwaves through the criminal landscape. While not directly involved, Vinnie Ryan's name was whispered in connection with the attack, further painting the target on his back. Just weeks later, on February 29, 2016, Vinnie Ryan's luck ran out. At 3:15 p.m, he was sitting alone in his white Volkswagen Golf outside his partner's home in Finglas. He'd just dropped off his partner Kelly and their 5-week-old daughter when a silver 5-door Volkswagen Golf with alloy wheels pulled up alongside and discharged a number of shots into the vehicle. In a meticulously planned attack, at least 13 shots were fired, one of which struck Vinnie in the head. He later died in the hospital. The getaway car was found burnt out. It was the second time in a few months that Vinnie had been targeted. In October the previous year, he suffered serious but non-life-threatening facial injuries after being approached by a man with a knife. The murder of Vinnie Ryan marked the end of an era. The Rio IRA, once a feared force on Dublin's streets, was now a shadow of his former self. The Ryan brothers, who had lived by the sword, had ultimately died by it. But the story doesn't end there. The aftermath of the Ryan brothers' reign of terror continues to reverberate through Dublin's criminal world. Their deaths left a power vacuum that was quickly filled by other criminal elements, leading to further violence and instability. The investigation into Vinnie Ryan's murder would uncover a complex web of criminal connections. Two men, Paul O'Byrne and Jeffrey Morrow, would eventually be convicted for their roles in facilitating the murder, having provided and then destroyed the stolen Volkswagen Golf used in the shooting. The trial of O'Byrne and Morrow shed light on the intricate planning that went into Vinnie's assassination. The stolen Volkswagen Golf, meticulously tracked through CCTV footage and forensic analysis, became a crucial piece of evidence. The car's destruction was intended to erase any trace of the perpetrators, yet the evidence left behind was enough to lead authorities to those responsible. In the years following the Ryan brothers' deaths, the criminal landscape of Dublin continued to evolve. The power vacuum left by their demise was quickly filled by other players, most notably the ascendant Kinahan cartel. The ongoing feud between the Kinahan and Hutch gangs would eclipse the violence of the Ryan era, bringing unprecedented levels of bloodshed to the streets of Dublin. One figure who emerged as a key player in this new era was the enigmatic criminal Jonathan Gill, known only as Mr. Big. Believed to have been involved in Alan Ryan's murder, his influence grew in the aftermath of the Ryan brothers' deaths. Gill's ability to navigate the complex alliances and enmities of Dublin's underworld made him a formidable force. Sources close to the investigation revealed that he had cultivated connections with both the Kinahan cartel and other criminal groups. His opportunistic approach to alliances allowed him to thrive in the chaos that followed the Ryan brothers' demise. The rise of figures like Mr. Big highlighted the shifting nature of organised crime in Ireland. The old structures, based on paramilitary organisations and rigid hierarchies, were giving way to more fluid, opportunistic criminal networks. This new landscape proved challenging for law enforcement, requiring new strategies and approaches. Recently, a number of online tributes have been posted to commemorate the 12th anniversary of Alan Ryan's death. The killing of the Rio IRA leader in September 2012 has been described as arguably the most significant gangland killing in the past decade. That was it for today's video. What are your thoughts on today's topic? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see our next videos.